What's up, everyone? It's Chris from Chris Beat Cancer, and today my guest is Dr. Michael Haley, chiropractor and owner of Stockton Aloe 1. And I'm really excited to have Michael on because he and I met a couple years ago at the Annie Appleseed Conference, another event you should know about and look it up. It's in Florida every year in, I believe, April. Great complementary and alternative medicine conference, especially having to do with alternative cancer therapy. So Michael and I met. We got to chatting about aloe because I'm a huge fan of aloe and drank aloe every day in my anti-cancer, it's part of my anti-cancer diet. And so he and I started talking about Stockton Aloe, and it was a fascinating conversation. And he let me try some of it, and it was the best aloe I've ever tasted. And so anyway, he and I have kept in touch since then, and I've wanted to interview him for a while, and finally now I have the opportunity. So Dr. Michael Haley, welcome.
Hey, Chris, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to do this. Let's talk about aloe. So you're a chiropractor. How did you end up buying Aloe 1 and taking over this company?
You know, it's actually a long story, but I'm going to give you the short version. Let me tell you how I discovered the benefits of aloe, and it had nothing to do with the aloe that you drink. My wife loves to sail. And we went on this race. We're on the sailboat, and the captain gave me instructions to pull up the sail. I know how to drive boats with motors on them. I'm not very good at sailboats. I don't know much about them, but I listened to the captain. I pulled up the sail, and the wind filled up this sail with air, and it just kind of. And I'm holding onto the rope, and it started ripping it through my hands. And I didn't know what to do. I looked at the captain. I realized by the time my eyes saw him, I realized something bad was going to happen. It was too late. And it started ripping the rope through my hands, and I had to let it go. We ended up running over the sail, and we lost the race. But my hands, I'm a chiropractor, I have now bloodied, blistered, and I could actually feel my hands tighten up because they were literally like melting from the heat from this rope burn. One of my patients, Rodney Stockton, who had been studying aloe vera since the late 40s, started his company in 1953. He was my patient. I was his chiropractor. And he said, you have to put this aloe cream on it. Just gob it on there nice and thick. And he gave me a jar of this cream. I remember specifically going to my wife 3 days later saying, look at my hands. They look better now than they did before the burns. It was like new skin. I was absolutely amazed. Well, I know a lot more now. I understand that. And he would bring in his bottles of aloe to drink. And at the time, I just it never had my attention until I saw what it did for my hands. But now I know that this is epithelial tissue, just like the gut. And what that means, it's like a specialized kind of tissue that can excrete and also absorb. Your skin actually eats, in a sense. Things we put on it go through your skin into your body, just like when you put something into this tube that goes through your body, goes in one end, comes out the other. You put food in that tube, and some of it actually makes it to the inside of your body by passing through that tube, going into your body. And of course, we eliminate back into the tube and then excrete out the other end. Just like our skin, through sweat and perspiration, we detox through our skin. So these organs work very much together. In fact, I like to consider the gut and the skin one and the same organ. It's like the gut is just kind of the skin folded in through the body and coming out the other end. A little more specialized, but thinking of it that way, just like aloe vera heals the skin faster, it seems to do the same thing for the gut, which is why we attract people with gut issues and immune system problems.
And you're a certified GAPS practitioner, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It happens to be something I really enjoyed studying. And I don't know if you've noticed the trend, but there's more and more people with digestive problems and immune system problems now more than ever before. The reason they call it gut and psychology syndrome, that the chemistry inside your gut affects how your mind works. The quickest analogy would be, well, if we drank something fermented, we might feel a buzz. Alcohol, chemistry from what you consume affects the way your mind works. And in the same way, when it comes to the microbes that are in your gut, you can have a healthy gut or a pathogenic gut. And pathogenic bacteria are going to tend to make a chemistry that affects the way your mind works in a negative way. So
yeah, and health starts in the gut, and the gut is really fascinating too, because your gut actually has its own central nervous system, and it's actually called, some people refer to it, scientists, as your second brain, which is pretty fascinating.
yeah, they tie in together, and just like the name gut and psychology syndrome, we're merging the two because we realize that, a healthy gut essentially is necessary for a healthy mind.
Absolutely. And, obviously I had a digestive cancer. I had colon cancer, and healing the gut was a major priority for me after surgery. And once I realized that health begins in the gut. And so, yeah, I was drinking a lot of aloe. So you met Stockton, he was your patient, and then turned you on to just the amazing benefits of aloe vera.
He was 96 years old, and he passed away from a heart attack. And, funny thing about Rodney, he didn't really have the healthy lifestyle or the healthy diet. The thing that he did healthy was consume aloe vera every day. And I remember going to see him in the hospital after he had his heart attack. He was just on machinery, keeping his body alive. But I remember specifically looking at his skin and how healthy it was. And as a physician, I automatically looked to the feet, because the part furthest away from the heart is where you see the worst health. And he had this plump, healthy skin, even on his ankles and feet. Well, about a year after he had died, we were customers still, but all of a sudden it was getting difficult to purchase aloe. And we thought, well, that's strange. And we eventually got a call from his former wife who said, I need help. And can you help me? And we went in and looked around and realized that the company definitely needed bailing out. So we did what we could, and essentially we took over the product line. And we didn't realize at the time it was possible, but we took the best aloe vera in the world and found ways to actually improve it and make it better. So it's a fun, it's been a great adventure. We're really enjoying it.
That's great. And let me just really plug it here. Look, here it is.
Hey, you've got your aloe vera there. Great.
Doctor, now I'm running a little low, man.
That's an empty bottle. I wonder if it's one that we just recently sent to you. Is there some on the bottom?
There's this much left. No, I love it. It's great. This is the only aloe I've ever consumed that I can drink straight. Because usually anybody who's bought aloe from the store, it's usually bitter and it just tastes really strange and it's hard to drink. And this has almost no taste. I mean, it's, when you compare it side by side to just this commercial store-bought stuff, the taste is so much better. I can drink it straight, but I usually just put it in a smoothie. It's just easy just to put 8 or 12 ounces in your smoothie. You don't taste it at all, and yeah, so very easy to consume, either mixed into smoothie or drink it straight. So let's talk about aloe and immunity and the glyconutrition and all the things that people would need to know. Like, why in the world would you need to drink aloe, or why does it help you?
Yeah, question I have for you, and it's kind of common knowledge, but what do you think the most important system in the body is when it comes to fighting illness? Your gut, your digestive tract. And why would that be? Well, because housed in there is probably 90% of your immune system.
That's right. It's the first line of defense of your immune system.
Yeah, yeah. And so the key to a healthy immune system is a healthy gut. Now, I'm not going to say aloe vera is the magic bullet to healing the gut. There are, I don't do magic bullets. It's one of those things. I happen to think it's probably, right there at the top, if not the number one food for a healthy gut. But, let's look at the whole diet, obviously, and make sure we're consuming foods that's going to make a healthy gut. So if we have a healthy gut, we should have a healthier immune system. Now, the neat thing is a healthy gut is not the only key to a good immune system. We also want foods that have nutrients in them that are going to help support our immune system in unique ways. Aloe vera happens to do both of those things very, very well. So that's one reason I really like it when it comes to maintaining health.
What's in it?
You know, there's one nutrient that's kind of fun, worth looking up. It's called acemannan, ACEMANNAN. And if you look that up, and don't look on my website, see what other people have to say about it. You know, you can go to pubmed.gov or whatever and look at some of the research on it. One of the things you'll see talked about is its effect on the macrophages in the immune system, causing them to secrete three very neat chemicals, specifically tumor necrosis factor, aka TNF. You'll see it written either way. You might see it written, interferons and also interleukins. Now, these are three closely related chemicals in the body. And what they do is essentially help the immune system to identify cancers and viruses. So we recognize that when people are sick, oftentimes it's the immune system is unable to recognize what's going on, and aloe vera has a nutrient that helps turn that system on. So very, very.
And doesn't that also improve cell-to-cell communication?
Yeah, well, that's part of it. Actually, it's increasing that communication specifically. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Right. So, okay. Why is explain why the Stockton Aloe is so much better than the stuff that I've had before on the shelf? Why does it taste so much better? I mean, why does it have to be refrigerated?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, when it comes to aloe vera, I do like to recognize the fact that, you know, aloe is one of those things where even when you have bad aloe, it's still pretty good. It just happens to be one of those superfoods, but they are definitely not all created equally. There's different kinds of plants, and pretty much all of the aloe companies, for the most part, except for a couple, are choosing the species Barbadensis miller. Now, within that species, which is pretty much, you know, the heavyweight champion, the #1 species of aloe vera, there's many varieties. Rodney Stockton, doing his research, he chose the variety that he found to have what he called the highest medicinal values, and he tagged his name onto it. So it's the Barbadensis miller species, the Stockton variety. But there's more to it than that, meaning even if you have that variety, there's best optimal harvest times. It's understood that the nutrition values are going to be much higher in a mature plant than in a young plant. So we want the leaves to be at least 3 years old, optimally 5 or more years old. A lot of times if you buy leaves in the store, you'll see they're small and sometimes, 1 or 2 years old. Sometimes you get the real big leaves in the store, but they'll be thin because they've been dehydrated, or they've taken a long time to actually make it to the store. So you want healthy, fresh cut, at least 3, preferably 5 or more years old, Barbadensis miller, and if possible, the Stockton variety of aloe vera. Now, that's just the beginning of making the best aloe vera. What do you do with it from there? Lots of companies will actually take these leaves or even the whole plants and run them through a grinder, or maybe they fillet them, possibly by hand. We do it by hand because it's definitely a cleaner way to get the gel out. But a lot of them also use machines. And if you look at machines filleting aloe vera, as you see the fillet sliding down the stainless steel slide from the machine, it's really like scraping off the green peel. And you'll notice they have this like yellow-green tint on it. That is the outer leaf anti-nutrients that we would call aloin. That's what gives it the bitter taste that you were talking about. It's also what gives aloe vera a laxative effect. Now, some people would use aloe vera specifically to help loosen the bowels when they have constipation. I don't think that's the best thing to do in the case of constipation. I think getting the right diet to heal your gut so you don't have constipation is a much more important way to treat constipation. So we tend to avoid the outer leaf anti-nutrients. We're focused on the inner leaf gel only. We use a specific hand fillet process that minimizes the aloin content. We tested about 2 to 4 parts per million aloin, which is extremely low. That's why you can barely taste it, why it almost has no taste when you consume the aloe. That's also, and this is important too, that's also why you can consume large amounts of it. Someone that really wants to support their immune system might drink as much as 24 ounces in a day. Now, when I'm harvesting aloe vera, I'll often keep my cup with me to taste along the process to make sure that it's not changing. I might drink as much as a half gallon a day, just making sure that everything is smooth and consistent.
Let me interrupt you.
Yeah.
Because when we were in Florida, well, you live in Florida, that's why you're so tan, but it's not the tanning bed, right?
Real thing.
I got one of these from you when I was down in Florida at Annie Appleseed, right? And I drank this entire 58 ounces in 24 hours. And because I had to get on a plane, right? I didn't want it to go to waste, so I just like chugged it. And in the 24-hour period I had left after I got it from you, yeah, no problem at all.
Right.
Didn't have diarrhea. No, didn't have any reaction to it.
I have to tell you a funny story, and it involves someone that worked for me. And she said I could tell this story, but I'm not going to use her name since this will be going on the internet, even though she wouldn't have a problem with it. But it was her second day on the job, and she came in a little sad. I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Well, I found out I might have, a certain kind of cancer again." And I gave her 2 bottles of our aloe. I said, "I want you to start drinking 3 cups per day. That's 24 ounces per day, because we're going to, support your immune system through this." And, whatever she wanted to do as far as, treating her condition, that was up to her. But I'll give you the wisdom that I know as far as nutrition. 3 glasses a day. Now, the next day was a funny day because she was in the bathroom almost the whole day. And I thought that was kind of odd because I know what I gave her and I know it had nothing to do with that. But the day after, again, she was in the bathroom all day long. And I mean, she'd come out for 20 minutes and go in for 30. Well, at the end of the day, she said, "Dr. Haley, is it possible the aloe runs right through you?" I said, "Not a chance." I said, "Well, I shouldn't say that, because if you got your aloe from, say, Whole Foods, then there's a good chance, but not what I gave you." She said, "Oh." I said, "What do you mean, oh?" She said, "Well, before drinking the aloe you gave me, I thought I would drink my husband's. He drinks it for his diabetes." I said, "Oh, no. Where's he get it?" "He gets it from Whole Foods." And sure enough, it had the outer leaf. I said, "How much were you drinking?" "Hopefully not 3 cups. She said, "I could only do 2. And my response was something like, 3 could have killed you, because it could dehydrate you and steal all your electrolyte minerals and cause your nervous system to fail. And your heart could go its bad. There's things that can go wrong when you dehydrate when you're in the bathroom all day long like that. So the lesson for me was be very, very specific when I tell people they can drink large amounts of aloe vera. It does not apply to other brands that have outer leaf components in it, because that will act as a laxative.
And so the lesson is, if you're drinking aloe or you're trying to drink a large amount and you get diarrhea, you're not drinking the right aloe.
Pretty much that's it, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And you'll see the serving size on the bottles. On a lot of the other brands, they'll say 1 tablespoon or 1 ounce. Whereas ours, we don't really have a serving size, but a lot of people drink 8 ounces at a time.
Yeah. And so what is some of the I know a lot of cancer patients come to you and they're drinking aloe as just part of their protocol. And was 24 ounces a day, is that the most they typically drink if they're really going to be aggressive about it?
That's what Rodney had always recommended. And it, I don't treat people like Rodney did, because he wasn't a physician and that was his only treatment. It was like, "Oh, you have cancer, here, just drink 3 glasses a day, you'll be fine in a week." That was his attitude, and I don't think that's the right way. But we have a lot of people telling this story where Rodney told me, back in 1970 something, drink 3 glasses a day and the doctors gave me 10 days to live, and here I am. So we've seen some interesting stories come from that. But I think and obviously, there's so much more you could do. Why would you want to limit your toolbox when there's so many other things? And,
Yeah, I mean, if all you're going to do is drink aloe and then go eat Wendy's cheeseburgers, that's a stupid plan. So, yeah. But, no, that's great, though. And it's fun. I've heard some of those testimonials, too, of people that have healed with just consuming massive amounts of aloe. Healed HIV/AIDS, healed cancer, all kinds of stuff. So it's powerful. I mean, why not include it in your protocol? I wouldn't put all your bets on just that. Healing cancer, it requires a total life change. I mean, that's what I did. I totally changed my diet, changed my life in every way, stopped eating processed food and junk food, and got rid of negative emotions and stress and forgave everybody that had ever hurt me. You know, so yeah, there's a lot more to it that I encourage everyone to do. And I know you and I agree on these things. And so for anybody watching that's completely new to me, it doesn't know what I'm about, well, there it is in a nutshell. It's not about a magic bullet, about a cancer cure, you know, miracle cure kind of stuff. It's about sharing information with people and helping them find good nutrition, right? Nutritional protocols that can support their body's ability to repair and regenerate and detoxify and heal, because the body can heal cancer. We've seen it many, many times. My website is full of these testimonials. So, yeah, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, technically there is no such thing as a cancer cure, but the body is amazing, and when you give it what it needs, it seems to have the ability to cure cancer. And you know, you've provided us with such great content. You know, I don't know if you still have links to Ty Bollinger's series on your website, or you know, there's a recent food revolution, which wasn't about cancer, but it was about, you know, eating right and just doing these things. So essential. You know, we all have to learn how to do it. And say no to the stuff that you know, is available in the common grocery store. You know, I mean, you have to learn what you can eat and what you can't from the grocery store, and there's not much in there anymore.
Organic, whole foods. Eat produce, fruits and vegetables, organic. That's your safest bet in the grocery store. Stick to the produce section, organic produce.
You know what's interesting though, and Chris, when you say that, because what is fresh produce? You know, I almost feel that it's better to eat, you know, frozen vegetables in many cases, because chances are those were removed from the field, cut, and then frozen that day. Whereas by the time you find it in the grocery store, I did a study on aloe leaves. I think it's an interesting video on our video page. But essentially the day, and I'm looking at the grocery store across the street out my window right now. It's right there, so I can go there frequently, and I'm keeping an eye looking for when the aloe leaves come in. And I had been harvesting a leaf from my yard, one per week, and labeling them. And the day they came in, I got the best one I could find, brought it back to our office here, and lined it up with the leaves that I harvested that were dated to see about how old that leaf was. And it was clear the day they made it available for my purchase, it was harvested at least a month earlier.
Wow.
Based on the markings on it, I could tell from my little study that I did. And it had thinned because it was, you know, dehydrating and stuff like that. Now, aloe doesn't turn over like avocados in a grocery store, so chances are those things are going to move slower and sit longer in the produce section. But how old is that tomato, that head of lettuce, that broccoli? How old is it? How long has it been sitting there by the time you get to it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it travels halfway around the world.
Yeah.
You know, it's harvested in Chile and South America. I mean, some of it in China. You know, it's really pretty nuts how far food travels, and a lot of it is picked before it's ripe. It's not vine ripened. So yeah, ideally, if you can buy from your farmer's market, that really is the top local organic, you know, produce if you can find it. But you know, a lot of people don't have that luxury, and so the best case is, you know, as long as you're eating tons of fruits and vegetables, you're on the right track. So now you ship this on dry ice. Can we talk about why you do that?
Sure. Sometimes we do. And during the summer, we're going to start shipping in dry ice again.
At least when you ship it in a cooler with ice packs or whatever.
Yeah, you know, before we talk about what's in that bottle, let me ask you a question. Because a lot of people, you know, I always hear the same answer from everyone, and it's not wrong, but it's really not the right answer. Chris, if I were to ask you, what is a preservative? What would you say? Or what's the purpose of a preservative?
We've already had this conversation, but I'm going to pretend like I don't know the answer. But yeah, a preservative, I think a normal person would say a preservative is something that they put in food to keep it from going bad.
Yeah, or to make it last longer, or, you know, yeah. So, you know, as somewhat of a food and cosmetic scientist, you know, my role in product development, when we make cosmetics especially, we have to measure the shelf life. We take a formula and we measure the bacteria in it, and then we'll add a preservative to it and see what its killing potential is. We'll make sure that we add enough preservative, and I'm not saying we as in our company, but people in the cosmetic, industry that does use the chemicals. We manufacture cosmetics, but we don't use the harsh chemicals. So you measure its killing potential, and you figure out the log reduction. This has the ability to kill off this much bacteria and then prevent life from growing in it for this period of time in these conditions. So the purpose of the preservative is actually to kill mold, yeast, fungus, bacteria. And the question is when you have preservatives in food and you put those inside your body, do they suddenly know to stop killing? Obviously not. It's creating an environment that is not there to sustain life. It's there to hinder life. And what is in your gut? This microbiome, this flora, these bacteria that are essential for not only protecting the gut so it doesn't inflame, but absorbing that it's that barrier that'll help digest and absorb your nutrients that you need to support your body. So we choose to minimize our intake of preservatives. It'd be like one of those things where if we're going to buy food, it's only when necessary. Even in the produce section, I remember going to a local health food store, one commonly known, and there was a sign that says, waxes. Our vegetables have waxes on there to improve their appearance. No, it's actually a preservative to make it deteriorate slower, so we don't actually realize how far removed they are from the, bushes, trees, wherever they came from. It's a preservative. We try to minimize our intake of that because every time we're eating food with some kind of preservative on it, in the case of a wax coating, or in it when you're buying canned or bottled foods and stuff like that, those things are making the quality of that food less vital, less supportive of life. Well, bring that home to Stockton Aloe number 1. We not only don't add preservatives to it, we actually don't even filter the aloe gel. We wash the leaves, we cut them a certain way, we hand fillet them. Those fillets go through a grinder. And at that point in most aloe processing companies or juice processing, whether it's vegetable or fruit juice, the stuff that we buy in the stores, they'll actually filter it. And in the case of aloe, they use diatomaceous earth and activated carbon. And then they run it through a pressure filter and kind of squeeze out the water of the aloe in a sense, and some of the mucopolysaccharides, but it tends to be thinned out significantly at that point. And when you hold it, when you pour it in a glass and hold it up to the light, you tend not to see any pulp in the aloe gels or juices that you buy from the store. They call that process decolorization and deodorization. Now, the nutrients are what add color and smell and taste to the food to begin with. So by taking those things out, you are devaluing the nutrient concentration. So we choose not to filter. What comes out of the leaf is what goes into the bottle, runs through a grinder, heat transfer to make it cold faster, into the containers, and then those go into the freezer. And that's how we ship, as we ship the aloe frozen to our customers.
I love it. I love it. I mean, I love the fact that you're so conscientious about the quality of your products, because there certainly aren't enough food and supplement producers that are. There's only a handful out there that really have super high standards as to the quality of the product they produce. And to me, it's so fascinating. And I think 99% of the people watching this had no idea that preservatives actually are bacteria killers, right? I think they think of them as just sort of being like an inert, chemical additive, not being healthy, right? But not actually knowing that they're actually like have killing power. Right. And that when you ingest artificial preservatives, right, they are, they can hurt you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the argument would be, well, it's such a small amount of the, of what's in the food. And I think, so I should be okay with it because it's such a small amount of this toxic killing substance. Imagine that I made a batch of cookies, and as I was making it, I accidentally sneezed in it, and chose to, they were raw, so they weren't going to get cooked or anything. I chose to ball them up and serve those. Such a small amount of sneeze made it in the bowl anyway. we don't want stuff with a small amount of something that doesn't belong in it. I don't care what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you have a cold, right? It just takes a couple germs. Yeah. Well, that's great. Okay. Anything else people need to know about Aloe 1 besides the fact that I love it? Great if you have gut issues. Aloe is very powerful. It's great if you're trying to get well from many maladies. It's worth taking it, drinking it, consume it, put it in your body, see what happens. There's absolutely no risk, no side effects. It's not going to harm you if you buy the right, really high quality product. What else do people need to know?
Boy, I think we covered it well. Great for the gut, great for the immune system. People sometimes use it because it helps lower and stabilize blood sugar levels in people that have diabetes. But the most common reasons that people are using it is for their gut when they have inflamed guts and for their immune system to help support their immune system. Yeah,
and there's a protocol that involves aloe and colloidal silver, right?
Yes, Robert Scott Bell actually brought that to my attention, and we have a number of people that combine the two, and it would just be interestingly, the aloe is not used for healing the gut in that. It's actually used to deliver the silver. So he'll recommend small amounts, and of course you can consume more than the 1 ounce at a time of aloe, but he says 1 ounce of aloe vera to 1 ounce of silver, and he specifically recommends the Sovereign silver brand.
Yep.
But the aloe is the delivery mechanism, and essentially that's to kind of support a healthy kill-off to actually lower your bad bacteria in your gut. Now, there will be some, damage to the good flora at the same time too. It's kind of targeted towards the unhealthy, so you support it with probiotics. It's like a gut replenishing, reprogramming. And since we have recommended that to people, we have heard the craziest stories of people getting well from things that they just couldn't find help with. So
that's great. I'll put a link to some resources about that too below the video so people can find it. What's your website?
We are aloe1.com, and I bet you might even have a link to it maybe on your website someday.
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked about it before. There's probably a link on my site somewhere on one of the hundreds of posts, and I refer people to you often. People that I coach and talk to about some of the things that they might want to consider doing. It's aloe1.com, and I'll put a link below in the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, full show notes will be on my site. The link will be in the notes below the YouTube video. If you're watching on my site, it'll be right below the video. So, Dr. Michael Haley, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for talking about aloe with us, and hopefully, I'm excited because hopefully more people will find out about you and this awesome product and get a little bit healthier.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for all that you do. You're a tremendous benefit to us all.
Thanks, man. Okay, well, if this was helpful, please like it, share it, spread it around, share it with people you love and care about, and I will see you on the next one.